What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of Blaze's collection. My name is Blaze, and of course, this is about the Pokemon Trading Card Game Online. It's a special weekend episode of this series that I'm starting up just for the weekends, going over some of my collection. I have a ton of cards, a ton of stuff from the older sets, like the original base set, Fossil, Jungle, Team Rocket, and Gym Leader. I kind of stopped playing after Gym Leader, but I do want to go over some of the stuff that I have. So the camera's a little bit shaky right now because I'm not going to have my face in the whole video. I just kind of wanted to, introduce myself and welcome you to my channel. But basically today we're going to look through this box. This is a box that I've had in my collection for quite some time, probably a good decade, and it is super old. I kind of have a basic idea of what's inside, but we're going to go through a few of these decks that I built. This is basically every deck that I've ever built in the Pokemon Trading Card Game. With those sets, and we're going to go through those today. So thanks again for tuning in. Let me go ahead and drop the camera off and we'll get started. So now there is one mystery in this box, one mystery that I believe I have solved, and the reason I say it's a mystery is because typically, I mentioned a second ago that I stopped collecting cards after the Gym Leader set. However, you'll see this Scraggy that's in here. Gym Leaders only goes through the first, I think, 150 Pokemon, and then they started introducing the Gold and Silver Pokemon. But this Pokemon, Scraggy, is in this box. And you might be asking yourself, but Blaze, how did that get in there? Well, I asked myself this question too, and I did not have an answer, because not only is this card in here, but Minoon, Weedle, Sandile, Drillbur, Dodrio, Fletchling, Tepig. There's a ton of cards in here that are not in the original 151, and I don't know how I got them. But going through these, I think there's an explanation. So this box was actually at my mom's house for quite some time. This box was just kind of sitting at my mom's house, and that's where it was for the longest time. When I bought my own house, I moved out, and I left this stuff here when I moved out originally, and then I eventually bought my own house and had all this extra space. So I decided to get everything out of that house. Once I did that, I believe that's where I decided that it was time to take my cards. I think my nephew must have given me these cards as I was leaving, and I just tossed them in this box. I think that's where they came from. But it's still a mystery to me, and I don't even know if that's true. I think I may have made that up. But anyway, so we're going to go through some of these cards here. Thanks for watching, guys. I really do appreciate you tuning in today. I'm going to open up at least 3 packs, at least 3 deck boxes here. We're going to go through these 3. And see what's inside, because I honestly don't remember. I don't remember what decks I built. I know one of these is a Rain Dance deck. I know one of these is a Haymaker deck. And I think there's like a Dark Blastoise deck in here too. I don't remember. But let's go ahead and get started with this first one. If the camera doesn't focus very well, just bear in mind that I have to change the focus on this camera so that you can see the cards. So you may not be able to see what's in the background over here, but I'll make sure I focus on the cards. So this is Golbat. Golbat is in the Fossil expansion. One thing you'll notice about these original cards is they have a lot, they don't have a lot of HP. 60 HP for a Stage 1 evolution is, I feel like it's kind of low. I think Raichu in the current set has a 90 HP. So I think that's something that they've kind of gradually increased over time, is the HP that Pokemon have. And then, of course, the attacks. Like, Wing Attack does 30 damage. That's nothing. That's super low. But you think about it, when your opposing Pokemon has 60 HP, this attack can knock him out in 2 hits. So, while that is very low, it's still kind of... It's good for what the cards were back then. The way that they are now, it's different because they kind of have to be in order to compete. But... anyway, enough talk about the cards and how they've changed. This, I don't remember what deck this is. Execute. He does Hypnosis with 1 Psychic Energy, and Leech Seed does 20 damage. And you get to remove 1 damage counter from Execute unless all damage is prevented. He does have 50 HP. Golbat, Wing Attack for 30 and Leech Life. Remove a number of damage counters from Golbat equal to the damage done to the defending Pokemon. If Golbat has fewer damage counters, then remove all of them. So, I think this is a Psychic deck. I don't remember. A Psychic Grass deck. Nidoran has Horn Attack for 30, and you do nothing on a Tails Flip. So that's kind of a common theme through all the cards. I've got Neato King here. This is a Stage 2 evolution, and you'll notice that it still only has 90 HP, which is super low for a Stage 2. Thrash does 30 damage, but you also flip a coin. If heads, you do 30 more damage, or you do 30 plus 10 more, and if tails, you do 30 damage, and he does 10 damage to himself, so I wouldn't use Thrash too often. Toxic, the defending Pokemon, is now poisoned. It now takes 20 poison damage instead of 10, so kind of neat. Gust of Wind is kind of like the Lysandra back then. It was a trainer card, and there was no limit on how many times you could use this per turn. So I'm not sure of a situation where you'd want to use this twice in a row. So I really don't know why they changed it to Lysandra as a supporter card, but it is what it is. During this time, they didn't have any supporter cards. So like cards like Bill, draw 2 cards. This is a trainer card, not an item card, except you can use this as many times as you want per turn. So, Pokeball, kind of a common one. Flip a coin if heads, search your deck for any basic Pokemon or evolution card, and put it into your hand. So, Zubat, Supersonic, flip a coin if heads, the defending Pokemon is now confused. And Leech Life, remove a number of damage counters from Zubat equal to the damage done to the defending Pokemon. 40 HP for a basic, it's kind of low, but I wouldn't say it's bad necessarily. At this point in the game, it's actually kind of good. So going through this deck, there's a lot of energy cards. Executor is a good example of how the game has changed. This Executor is Teleport. Switch Executor with one of your benched Pokemon. And Big Explosion, flip a number of coins equal to the number of energy attached to Executor, and this attack does 20 damage times the number of heads. So that could do a lot of damage. It only takes 1 colorless energy. So I'm beginning to think this is actually more of a grass type deck. And I remember using this deck against some of my other decks because I couldn't really. So here's a story about me, and I'm gonna tell you this story because it's kind of a fun story. So when I was younger, I didn't have a whole lot of people to play this game with, and so I ended up playing with myself against my other decks, and trying to be unbiased in that. It's very hard to do that, but I managed to make it work, I guess. But it was really the only way I got experience and the only way that I learned, because there wasn't anybody that would play this game with me. Now the trading card game online is awesome, so you can play with anybody as many times as you want and really gain better strategies and stuff like that. But back then I didn't have that. So, Nidorino. This is 60 HP for a stage 1. Double Kick does 30 damage times the number of heads after flipping 2 coins, and then Horn Drill 50. Actually a pretty powerful attack, but I feel like Neato King, if I have another one, I'll show you that comparatively. Oh, Pinsir is a good one. Let's hold on to that for a second, though, because I want to see if I can find Neato King. So comparatively, Neato King, what does he do? So Toxic is 20. That if any Pokemon's poisoned, and you do 20 damage times the number, or 20 poison damage between turns. So Neato King is almost worse than Nidorino because he does 30 plus 10, but he might also damage himself. Nidorino does 50 straight out of the gate, and it takes an extra energy to pull it off, but it's arguably more powerful. The only downside is a 60 HP. So in this game, you didn't have an item that would actually increase your HP. It was just 60 HP. So anyway, in this deck, if I was looking at this deck today, I would probably take out Neato King because I don't think that's a very solid. Whoops. I feel like that's kind of a bad card. Where'd I put him? There he is. So I feel like that's kind of, while you get the extra 30 HP, to me, I don't think it's worth it to be able to do less damage. I don't know. Maybe the game's changed a lot. I know the game has changed a lot to today's standards, but back then, I was just doing what I thought was right. I guess I thought that having a Stage 2 Pokemon in your deck was better than Stage 1, and sometimes it is, but in that case, it's kind of not. So, Pinsir. This one does 60 HP. Iron Grip does 20 damage and paralyzes the defending Pokemon on a tails flip, or heads flip, sorry. And then Guillotine does 50 damage. So kind of like that Nidorino we just saw does 50 damage on a Guillotine. Same energy cost, 1 retreat cost. I like this card's artwork a lot. It's really cool. And I think overall Pinsir is a really good Pokemon. And, you know, has potential, has a lot of potential. This card would get demolished in today's standards. So, energy removal. Choose 1 energy card attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon and discard it. Kind of a neat card if you need to. It's just like the energy hammers, I think it is what they are in the game now. Energy hammer will it will take, I think you flip a coin and you get to remove an energy card. But this one is just, you just do it. You don't have to flip. Professor Oak, discard your hand and draw 7 cards. Same card that we've had before, but in today's game, it's a support card. Where this one, you could do this, get another Professor Oak, and then do it again. So I'm not sure how you, like, if you'd want to do that or not, but you know, maybe there's a situation where you'd need to. Potion, remove 2 damage counters from one of your Pokemon. Today's potion is 3 damage counters, and the reason is because the HP is so much higher. They kind of had to increase the amount of damage counters you remove, and they also they took out the terminology of damage counters and replaced it with 20 HP. Heal 20 HP from your Pokemon. I think it's common sense. We know what that means, so it doesn't really make much difference there. Build, draw 2 cards. So that's this deck. I don't even know what I called this deck. I feel like I had names for them, but I didn't really know what to call them necessarily. So that's deck number 1 of the originals that I built. I built a lot of decks. I didn't realize how many decks I actually did build. There's quite a few. And I found some theme decks too, just by glancing at some of the boxes that I had. I found some actual theme decks that we're going to get into as well later on. But today's episode is just about a few decks and a few cards. Before I get to the next one, I want to show you this. Inside this box were these cards as well. I had some Japanese cards that I purchased, I think off of eBay or something like that. Japanese, was that Lieutenant Surge? Lieutenant Surge's Eevee. 20 damage. I can't remember what that was. I think we'll probably come across this card later on. So that'd be cool. This is kind of a controversial card because this is like one of the only cards where I think they changed the artwork for the American card because this card has a Misty that's basically nude. Kind of inappropriate for a 10-year-old girl to be hugging Staryu while she's naked. And also for kids playing this game, they shouldn't see, you know, this card. But in all honesty, it's kind of a neat card. I can't remember what it does. We'll probably get to it when I get to the, you know, I would say probably several episodes from now when we get to the Gym Leader series when I show off that collection. But, you know, it's kind of an interesting card, I think, nonetheless. So let's see here. So that's that. We've got Neato, Poliwhirl, another Misty. Lieutenant Surge's Jolteon. That's kind of neat. I can't read these cards, so that's not helping much, but at least I can give you an idea of what they look like back then. To some of you newer players, it might be harder to know what the game used to be. The game's different now. It's not totally different, but it's still different because of the attacks and what they did, how much damage they did, and how much HP you had. This is a Team Rocket Oddish. Sleep Powder puts the defending Pokemon to sleep, and Poison Powder, the defending Pokemon's now poisoned. Abra does Vanish and Psyshock. Vanish, shuffle your Abra into your deck, and Psyshock for 10 damage. You get to paralyze the defending Pokemon on heads flip. Charmander, Gather Fire. This is a Team Rocket Charmander. You can tell by the R right there. Once during your turn, you may take 1 fire energy attached to one of your other Pokemon and attach it to Charmander. This power can't be used if Charmander is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. Almost every single ability in the game back then, you could not use if your Pokemon was asleep, confused, or paralyzed. So it's kind of hard to relate that to the game now, but there are a lot of abilities that you could just use whenever you feel like it, even if your Pokemon is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. And I think that restriction, I like that restriction, because decks like, well, I'm trying to think of a good example. A lot of the abilities in the game now actually can be activated from the bench, and you can't be confused or paralyzed on the bench. There's a few instances where you're actually in the active Pokemon slot, and maybe it reduces damage or something like that. I'll take my Machamp as an example. It reduces, or it adds 20 damage to all my fighting Pokemon, but if you confuse him or put him to sleep, you know, he wouldn't get that benefit from that extra 20 damage. But that's kind of a long story. But anyway, there's Charmander, Zubat, Rocket, Team Rocket, Zubat, Ram, and Bite. Grimer. I just talked about an Alola Grimer on my channel yesterday. I think it was on Friday. Alola Grimer is dark and poison type. This is just regular Grimer. He's poison. Poison type Pokemon were actually grass type Pokemon in this game, so you'll see that there. You'll see a lot of poison type Pokemon as being grass types. They changed them to psychic types for whatever reason. I guess because of the colorization of the Pokemon, but it is what it is. Poison Gas puts the defending Pokemon to sleep, and Sticky Hands does 10 damage, and if you flip heads, it does 10 damage plus 20 more damage, and the defending Pokemon is paralyzed. If Tails, just does 10 damage. Ekans does Bite for 10 damage, and Poison Sting 20 damage, and you flip a coin. If heads, they're poisoned. So I think I like Ekans as a grass type better than I like him as a poison type, or as a psychic type, I mean, but there's really nothing that you can, I don't have an argument, really. So Dark Flareon does Rage, 10 damage plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on Dark Flareon. That's up to 40 damage, or 50 damage, I should say. But again, look at the HP. It's only 50, so, you know, it's very low HP. And I think that was a restriction with Rocket Pokemon, is that while they typically were more powerful, they had less HP, so they die a lot quicker. Playing with Fire does 30 damage. Use this attack only if there are any Fire energy cards attached to Dark Flareon. Flip a coin. If heads, discard one of those energy cards and do 30 damage plus 20 more damage. If tails, do 30 damage. We don't have this card in the game today, so this is a full heal energy. If you play this card from your hand, the Pokemon you attach it to is no longer asleep, confused, or paralyzed, or poisoned. And it provides one colorless energy. So we don't have a card like this. I kind of wish we did, because it would come in handy. But we have double colorless, we have rainbow, we have a few others, but not this one. And we have, I think I just cycled back through the cards here. So, alright. So let's move on to the next deck. Some interesting cards in this series. I'll be honest there. There's definitely some interesting cards. That Misty card, I thought it was weird. I didn't know if I'd ever get that card. I think that's when I bought some of the Japanese gym leader sets, and I think back then you were able to use those cards in a deck. It was a little sketchy because you didn't know what those attacks did. You could just make it up. But anyway. So this one is a Psychic deck, clearly. I'm not sure what's in it. Oh, this is a Psychic Water deck. So, alright, let's take a look. So Dark Golduck, Third Eye. Discard one energy card attached to Dark Golduck in order to draw up to 3 cards. And Super Psy does 50 damage. I like the wording on this card because just reading it, you know what you can do. You can draw up to 3 cards. You don't have to draw 3 cards if you don't want to. If you start running low on cards, you can draw just 2 if you want. But so Psyduck, Dizziness, draw a card. And Water Gun does 20 damage plus 10 more damage for each water energy attached to Psyduck, but not used to pay for this attack. You can't add more than 20 damage in this way. So if you have 4 water energies, that's going to do the maximum amount of damage you can do, and it'll do 40 damage. So again, it's in the Rocket set. It's not a dark Psyduck because all of the basic Pokemon did not start off as dark, but it did 50 damage. It was when they evolved that they became dark. So Gambler, shuffle your hand into your deck, flip a coin. If heads, draw 8 cards, and if tails, draw 1. So I think Nintendo was kind of reluctant to have gambling as part of their games. So they took cards like this out and made it Professor Sycamore, I think? I don't know. It's Professor something. Gengar. So this card is a interesting card. So if you're hearing this music right now, I'm just playing music from the Pokemon soundtrack and from a few other things too. So, you know, excuse me, I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just playing music from the Pokemon soundtracks and things that came across. It's actually on my Spotify. So if you guys want to go to Spotify and check out my playlist, Pokemon is one of them. I have pretty much everything in there. But anyway, so Gengar is 80 HP. Its power is Curse, and once during your turn, you may move one damage counter from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another. This power can't be used if Gengar is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. Dark Mind for 30. If your opponent has any benched Pokemon, choose one of them, and this attack does 10 damage to it. So 30 damage plus the 10 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Ghastly does Lick. Flip a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon is now paralyzed. 10 damage on that. And then Energy Conversion. Put up to 2 energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. Ghastly does 10 damage to itself. Alright, so a couple of Psychic Energies here. I just looked at Dark Golduck. Energy Retrieval. Trade one of the other cards in your hand for up to 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile. That's pretty neat. I like that card a lot. I wish there was a card like this in the game today, but it comes in handy quite a bit. Sabrina's Gaze. Each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck and draws a new hand of the same number of cards. I like this card. It's kind of like In, except you don't get cards based on your prize cards that are left. You get cards based on what you had before. Super Potion. Discard 1 energy card attached to one of your own Pokemon in order to remove up to 4 damage counters from that Pokemon. So they don't specify whether or not you can use this if your Pokemon doesn't have any energy cards attached to it. I don't think you can, but the game today does allow you to use a card similar to this without any energy cards attached to your Pokemon. So, looked at Gengar a few minutes ago. Let's see if we can find a different card here. Energy Retrieval, Dark Golduck, Haunter. We haven't talked about that yet. So Haunter, its ability Transparency. Whenever an attack does anything to Haunter, flip a coin. If heads, prevent all effects of that attack, including damage done to Haunter. This power stops working while Haunter is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. And then Nightmare does 10 damage and puts the defending Pokemon to sleep. So we'll keep moving through this deck here. I believe that's a... Is that a hollow card? Let me check. No. I think there is one, though. Is this one? No. It's just these sleeves make it look like it. So, Computer Search. Discard 2 of the other cards from your hand in order to search your deck for any card and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterwards. So, I think there's a card like this in the game today, and I feel like it does something very similar. I can't remember what it is, and I'm sure you know, so post in the comments. But it's kind of a neat card. Pokemon Trader is a good one. Trade one of the basic Pokemon or evolution cards in your hand for one of the basic Pokemon or evolution cards from your deck. Show both cards to your opponent and shuffle your deck afterwards. This is very much like Ninja Boy, except you do it with the cards in your hand instead of the cards that are in play. So Ninja Boy is probably a little bit better, but that's kind of neat, kind of a neat card. So No Removal Gem. It's a stadium card. A player must discard 2 cards from his or her hand in order to play an energy removal or super energy removal. So that's actually kind of a tricky card that will allow you to think twice before using an energy removal. Pokemon Breeder is one of my favorite cards. This is very much like Wally, or it's a little different though. So put a Stage 2 evolution card from your hand on the matching basic Pokemon. You can only play this card when you would be allowed to evolve that Pokemon anyway. So in this particular card, the card you're evolving to has to be in your hand. So you can't just search your deck for it and put it on there. It has to be in your hand already. So the cards we have today are a little better than that, but that's kind of neat. And that's pretty much this deck. I don't know if I named this deck anything, but it's kind of a neat deck. something I am planning on doing is I am looking for someone pretty close to me, whether it's a friend or something like that, to actually come over and play using some of these decks so you can kind of get an idea of how these decks worked and how the game worked back then. Before I get to that deck, I do want to show you that at the time I used dice to count damage. I think this red one was a poison dice, so I tracked poison using that one. But I think even in today's game, people use dice to track damage and stuff like that. And then there's a coin. The coins back then were cardboard, and now they're a little bit more high quality with plastic and stuff like that. But this card is, these are the damage counters I use. They originally had like little beads that you would use to put on the cards, and that just became too much to track. So I ended up using dice, and it worked out pretty well. But I don't think I ever needed all of these dice. But again, the HP in this game is so much lower than the HP of today's game. And just to prove my point, I think I have, like this is Scraggy, a basic Pokemon with 60 HP. And most of the ones I've shown you so far only had, like for instance, this Eevee only has 30 HP. This Manoon has 60 HP. So, even this Drillbur has 70. So the HP has increased quite a bit from the original game. But anyway, let's go ahead and open up this last pack here, or this last deck, and see what I've got. So this, on the cover of this, is a Charizard, clearly, and this actually does happen to be a Charizard deck. It's not the one that you're thinking of, though. So this is a Charmander, 40 HP, from the Team Rocket set. Whoops. You'll notice also this is a first edition card, and I actually have, it's probably my most prized possession in my collection, is I have the entirety of the Team Rocket set first edition, so I'll show you that in a future video, but keep that in mind. So I think I showed this card earlier. Gather fire once during your turn. You may take one fire energy attached to one of your other Pokemon and attach it to Charmander. But again, you can't use it if Charmander is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. Here is Dark Charmeleon. So Dark Charmeleon does Tail Slap for 20. And Fireball for 70. Use this attack only if there are any fire energy cards attached to Dark Charmeleon. Flip a coin. If heads, discard one of those energy cards. If tails, this attack does nothing. So again, you'll notice this has 50 HP, which is only 10 more than Charmander had. So it's got 50 HP, and it's a dark Pokemon. So the dark Pokemon typically have lower HP. Dark Flareon does Rage. I think I showed you this earlier. 10 damage plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on Dark Flareon. And Playing with Fire, use this attack only if there are any fire energy attached to Dark Flareon. Flip a coin. If heads, discard one of those energy cards. And do 30 plus 20. If tails, do 30. The Boss's Way is a neat card. Search your deck for an evolution card with dark in its name. Show it to your opponent and put it into your hand. So that's kind of a cool card. You can actually search for any dark type evolution card. Kind of neat. Ponyta. Ember does 30 damage. You discard a fire energy attached to Ponyta in order to use this attack. Ponyta, whatever you want to call it. Switch works very much like the Switch of today. You basically just switch your bench Pokemon with your active Pokemon. One of the more useful cards in almost any deck. We talked about Pokeball and Professor Oak and Fire Energy and Bill and Eevee. We showed that. Sand Attack, I don't think I talked about this one. Maybe I did. If the defending Pokemon tries to attack during your opponent's next turn, they flip a coin. If tails, they do nothing. And of course, it does 10 damage. This definitely is a fire deck. I know I've got a Dark Charmander in here, or Charizard, I should say. We saw energy removal earlier. That one does. It will discard an energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. Charmander, here he is, Dark Charizard. This is a really cool looking card. I love the artwork for this card. But look at its HP. It's only 80 HP. Very low for a Stage 2. Does Nail Flick for 10 damage and Continuous Fireball. So 50 damage times the number of heads that you flip. Basically, I'll read what it says here. So you flip a number of coins equal to the number of fire energy attached to Dark Charizard. This attack does 50 damage times the number of heads. Discard a number of fire energy cards attached to Dark Charizard equal to the number of heads. So every time you flip heads, you discard a card, but you also do 50 damage. Let's keep going here. This might be all the cards. I may have talked about all of them today. So, but as you can see, you can kind of get an idea of how I built this deck. I have a couple of Dark Charizards in there. This is Dark Rapidash. Does Rear Kick for 20 damage, and Flame Pillar does 30 damage. You may discard one fire energy attached to Dark Rapidash when you use this attack. If you do, and if your opponent has any benched Pokemon, choose one of them and do 10 damage to it. Not bad. The artwork's kind of cool. So this is pretty much the end of the deck here. I've gone through all the cards that's in it in other decks, but you kind of get an idea of what kind of deck it was. I'd very much like to play this deck against one of my other decks with another person. So if you know me in real life, hit me up, because I would love to play this with you and get a video going and kind of give you an idea of how that was going to work. So that'd be cool. That'd be something to look forward to. As far as today, right now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video. I'll be back with episode 2 probably next week or in a few days or something like that, to go through the rest of this deck and see what comes out of it, because I don't know. The rest of this box, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will be back very soon. You guys have a great day. Take care of each other.